Right, hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this video. Now clearly, I've spent a wee bit of hiatus for YouTube. It's not been too long. I mean, it's not like I've been down in the dark slumps of Northeast Asia or something like that. I've just been cooped away working from home, really, and I've just not had the motivation to film as many YouTube videos as I have been in the last, 18 months to 2 years. I wasn't really feeling the reacting from home type content that I was doing for the SPFL, and then outside of that, in the last few months during lockdown, I've rinsed about every single Scottish football video idea that I could possibly have, and until the championship comes ever closer, I can't really do a prediction video for that. So there's those type of videos that will be coming eventually, but in that wee in-between period, there wasn't a hell of a lot. But I'm going to start becoming a bit of a YouTuber again. Yes! So it's not the usual setup that I usually once had. I had a wee TV and graphics, etc. I've just went for basic, plain old, boring this time. There's a bit of painting behind me. Just call me Vincent van Gogh. And just like Van Gogh, you can use your cultured hand to click that subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. I think about 62% of you are not subscribed to the channel that watch the videos, so why on earth no just subscribe, eh? However, as you've seen by the thumbnail, the title, etc, etc, we are here today to talk about the Scotland squad and fans eventually returning to games. Maybe sooner rather than later. First up, Steve Clarke's Scotland squad. Now I've got the team right up here in front of me on my mobile device. And the goalies, David Marshall, Rory McCrory and John McLaughlin. Who would I start in the Scotland team? John McLaughlin. And here's why. He's proven himself to be a decent goalie at basically every club he's been at. He was very good at Hearts and very well thought of there. Moved on to Sunderland, and speaking to a couple of people, they seem to believe that he wasn't the main problem at Sunderland. I wouldn't have known too much about that, just because I don't really keep up with that much English football, but I wouldn't assume that they're very wrong in that point, mainly because he's gone on and got a move to Rangers, and now, after Alan McGregor's sort of absence through injury, suspension, one of the two, he's been put in the limelight in the first team spot, and he's done very well. So I would have him as the starting Scotland goalie. I've seen a couple of arguments of David Marshall here and there. He's a decent enough goalie, and he's definitely had sparks of good form in the last couple of seasons, but for me, it's John McLaughlin, with Robbie McCrory being there for the future prospect of having a young goalie coming through. Defenders, you've got Liam Cooper, Declan Gallagher, Scott McKenna, Stephen O'Donnell, Liam Palmer, and Andy Robertson, Greg Taylor, and Kieran Tierney. Now, Scott McKenna. Ooh, shudder. Scott McKenna's the only real one in there that I'm never been keen on, at all. But it's nice to see players like Liam Cooper picked. Declan Gallagher, I still think, is one of the best centre-halves that we've got in Scotland, which, based on your own opinion as to whether that actually points to Scotland having a garbage or good defence on the whole. But then you've obviously got the key additions of Kieran Tierney and Andy Robertson, which sparks great debate on where they should play in the team. I personally think we should go with a three at the back and have Kieran Tierney as one of the centre defenders, obviously being left-sided because that's where he would usually play at left-back, so it helps. And he's also played there for Arsenal and played pretty decent. There's one level of English football that I have been keeping quite up to date with, and that's the Premier League, of course, because it was recently on telly every single place you looked. And then you've obviously got Andy Robertson, who, aside from Alphonso Davies at Bayern Munich, is probably the best left-back in the world. But I'd play Kieran Tierney as one of a back three and put Andy Robertson in at left wing-back, etc, etc. You get the point of that. It gets them both into the team and in roles that they're both very comfortable in playing. The midfield is Scotland's strongest suit. Now, it's not very hard considering the defence and the strikers are not exactly very high quality, but the midfield is very good. It's full of good quality and players that play at a decently high level. Of course, you've got Stuart Armstrong playing at Southampton in the Premier League, John Fleck, Sheffield United Premier League, John McGinn, Aston Villa Premier League, and then you've got Callum McGregor, Ryan Jack, Ryan Christie, etc, etc. You've even got someone like Kenny McLean, Scott McTominay, so there's a decent calibre there, and I really think that is where Scotland are really well suited for the future as well, because all of these players are pretty young and I've got a lot of years ahead of them, so I don't really have any problems with the selection in midfield. I don't really see any way that we could have massively improved that. And up front is another kind of talking point of, are we actually that well stacked up front? And I think the obvious answer is no, but with the additions of Ollie Burke, Lyndon Dykes, James Forrest, Ollie McBurney and Lawrence Shankland, it's no much. I mean, Lawrence Shankland himself has been injured for the majority of this season so far. You've got Ollie Burke there. I've seen him score. Go on then! Oh! Yes! Come on! Yeah! Oliver Burke's class. It's fine. Brilliant striker. But, I mean, it's no great. James Forrest, been quite off form for Celtic this season so far and isn't exactly pulling up as many trees as he once would have. And he runs like an aeroplane. That's an easy dig to make it, that boy. And Ollie McBurney, he's one that I've never been a fan of. I know he's got a purpose in a team. He's there to just kind of be a bit of a nuisance, and he has scored goals at Premier League level, so maybe I'm being a bit harsh on the boy, but I don't know. It doesn't scream massive amounts of quality to me. Lyndon Dykes is the new one to talk about, of course, because he's chosen Scotland over Australia. He had the choice between the two because his parents were... Let's try that one again. His parents were Scottish, and I think he's Australian. I mean, obviously he's got that Australian accent. I've heard him in interviews. He's definitely got the Australian accent, but he has chosen Scotland, and I think Steve Clarke will utilise that. Obviously, with Lawrence Shankland barely playing any games, and the others not really batting at many trees in terms of goals, I think he'll go with that target man type, and I think the whole kind of palaver about getting Lyndon Dykes on board in the Scotland setup is going to lead to him getting games. So overall, I'm not too displeased with the Scotland squad. The defence is what it is, the strikers are what they are. It's kind of all we've really got at the moment, which maybe is a bit of a sad indictment, but it's the world we live in. But the midfield is very good. And now, finally, to talk about in this video, fans returning to games, the one we all want to see. We've been waiting for so long. I was at the last SPFL game between St Mirren and Hearts. It was the difference between Hearts staying up or going down. If they'd won that game, they would have stayed up. All this palaver with all the court cases, etc. probably would not have happened in the same way it did. However, we move on. Fans coming back to the football. It's the long-awaited return, isn't it? There's been talk, obviously, of as far up as UEFA games like the Super Cup being played with a 30% crowd of the attendance of that stadium. I think the attendance in that stadium is around 68,000, so 30% of that I think is around the 20,000 mark. So there is a good scope of fans being able to attend that game, and that'll be a good test event with a large amount of numbers. 18,000-ish and above isn't a minimal amount of numbers, so it'll be a good test. I put out a tweet earlier saying about if championship teams were to bring in those sort of figures into games, how much of their stadium would they be able to fill? And for the vast majority of championship teams, they would be able to have their full attendances anyway. Aside from Hearts, of course, because they're the big boys in the league, which for them won't be great, of course, but for the rest of the league, it works out well. I just really want to see fans back at games as soon as possible. It's been a nightmare having to not be able to go to the football, and seasons kick off later than usual because fans can't be at the games, blah blah blah. Hopefully all these test events go ahead well and we can just get back to games, because it's the most important thing in mental health and well-being, I suppose, because a lot of people rely on the football at the weekend to really boost their weekend. Whether their team's shite or not, they rely on their team to be that number one thing that they can rely on to be there week in, week out. And the most important thing now is just to get back to the football, stay responsible for this time where we're doing test events and stuff so that no hiccups are made. And hopefully it'll see the safe return of football. With limited fans, we all expect that now. And then eventually, once the right time comes, full fans back in the stadiums as it once was. So I'm back on the YouTube scene. I'm really hoping I'm going to stick to this at this point. I don't want to fall into the trap of just becoming a bit irrelevant on the whole YouTube scene, especially with going to the Football Content Awards in a few months. I don't want to be leaving a sort of dead channel around that type of period. Obviously with the football coming back eventually, that's when content will really start to amp up again. But in the next few weeks I'm really hoping to bring content back to you. So if you like that, then give this video a like, comment down below your thoughts on the Scotland squad and fans coming back into grounds, and subscribe for more of this type of content. And until the next video, I'll see you then. Cheers guys.